Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be talking to Jua Howard from UC Berkeley and Tara Howell from Brown University, two amazing, very highly selective universities. And they are going to talk a little bit about what they look for in applicants. They'll talk about their schools. And hopefully, if we have a little time at the end, we will open it up for questions. In the meantime, if you have questions during their talk, you can just put them in the chat. And there are three CCNs. I'm Kate Heald at BCC. We also have Gail Evans from Walter Johnson, and we have Sarah Kessler from Walt Whitman High School. So they can help me with the chat as well if there are questions. And I'm going to go ahead and stop talking and Jua and Tara, why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves, please?
I can go ahead and go first. My name is Tara Howell. I am the Assistant Director of Admission for Brown University, but I am a regional admission officer, so I'm actually based in Baltimore, so a little bit closer to y'all.
And good morning, everyone. My name is Jua Howard. Use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm an assistant director in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at the University of California at Berkeley. Similar to Tara, I'm also regionally based in the DC area in Northern Virginia, so on the other side of the region, but still close to you all, and excited to be part of the conversation this morning with Tara.
So why don't we start with, I will ask you some questions. Why don't we go ahead and start with Jua, since you're on my screen right now. Talk a little bit about what it is that you look for in a candidate, because obviously you're a very selective school and we have a lot of very high performing students in, well, all three of the schools that are represented here by us, but then the students themselves that are on this call. A lot of them are looking for very selective universities, and what you're looking for may be a little bit different than maybe our public state schools. So that would be great.
Sure. And I'll kind of preface it, I guess, give it a little info about UC Berkeley. We didn't kind of jump into our schools because I definitely think kind of the institution itself, what our mission is, how we're structured, all the various things that make us distinct will dictate how we build our classes, who we want on our campus, who we see being a good fit. We say that term quite a bit in our world, but it's actually very accurate. But it starts with who we are as an institution, and then we kind of work from there. UC Berkeley, we are a four-year public institution, and we are the flagship campus for the University of California system. And so clearly that comes with a lot of popularity, but also comes with a kind of a shared responsibility across the UC system for accessibility and to make sure that everyone hopefully can find a spot on one of our campuses. But Berkeley tends to be one of the more selective UC campuses. So that also comes with a whole host of other things going to your question, Kate. So for us, some key things to know. We have over 150 majors and minors split between six colleges and one school, ranging from School of Business, College of Engineering, College of Chemistry, College of Computing, Data Science, and Society, to social sciences and natural resources and so on. So you have a really broad range of what you can really tap into at Berkeley. We are a Research One institution, so we are very much focused on providing support to students to get involved in research as an undergraduate student, whether it's independent research, whether it's working with faculty and staff. We have study abroad programs. I think we were talking about that before we got started today, whether it's semester long, in the summer, year long, even dual degree programs. You can study at Sciences Po for your first 2 years in France, or at the University of Hong Kong for your first 2 years. We have over 1,200 student groups and organizations, so we are a very actively engaged and connected community. With everything from academics type of programs, affinity groups, we have over 80 different kinds of publications. We're Division One in athletics. We have Greek life, if that's important to you. And then, of course, tied into all of that, I think with the Berkeley history, we are very much about service, community, activism. How do you show up and be present on our campus for our campus community, local community, and on the global level? That is very, very important to Berkeley. And that stands from everything from our public service center to our commitment to entrepreneurship. We're very much about it, taking initiative, and social entrepreneurship is also kind of built into that. So I kind of led with all of that. It's a lot of information. I know we'll talk a little bit longer. I don't want to ramble here. But all of that plays a part as to what type of students that we see really thriving at Berkeley. And that's our kind of the thought process that we have when we're going through our process. We practice a holistic admissions process, which a lot of schools do throughout the US. So we're looking at everything. I always stress to students, if you share it, it is considered. So you have to be mindful of what you are sharing with us and hopefully filling in gaps where you need to so that if I read your application, it's a very clear picture of who you are as a student and hopefully what you will contribute once you come to our campus. So what we're looking at clearly academic preparation. That's for any school. But it's deeper than just, hey, I got an A in this particular class, which a lot of times students will say, I got straight A's, Mr. Howard. Can I be admitted? I'm like, it's much deeper than that. We're looking at clearly your grades in your classes, but starting with also the rigor of your courses. When we talk about holistic admissions process, in general, context is the key to that for pretty much most schools. What is available to you at your school and how are you maximizing it? So are you taking advantage of your curriculum, whether that's AP, IB, dual enrollment, a combination of all three? But how are you maximizing that curriculum? So we're looking at rigor throughout high school, clearly your grades. We look at trends of your grades. So maybe you've been consistent all 4 years. Great. Maybe you've had an upper grade trend where your grades have gotten better over time. We love it. The other way around, they're going down. We need to have a conversation, but that is still a part of the thought process. Um, we're a little different where we are from a testing standpoint. We are test free. And I know testing is a big conversation. We'll probably dig a little bit more into this, but basically test free, aka test blind, means that we do not consider the SAT or ACT in our process at all. You cannot submit it to us. You cannot self-report it. We will not look at them. And that's the entire UC system. So all 9 campuses, same policy. However, AP exams, IB exams, A levels for some students who may have them, particularly where you were before, we do consider those kinds of exams. And getting beyond the academic portion, we get into extracurriculars. What have you been involved in school and out of school? Whether that's student government, you're on a sports team, you're doing community service, you are president of your class, you're an ROTC, but also maybe you have a job, which is equally valuable. Maybe you're doing community service, maybe you're running your own business, maybe you're helping at home, you're doing research. All of those things are valuable. So that's really important. Leadership is built into that. And we kind of go from there. So that's a very long response, but I really wanted to kind of give, again, for any school, really the school and the culture of that school, what we're seeking based on what we represent is going to dictate how we go through the admissions process. So those are some really key things to keep in mind of what we're seeking when we're looking at that total picture in the holistic process to determine if you're going to be a good fit for our campus.
Thank you, Tara.
Yeah, I was gonna go ahead and jump in. I only have a couple things to add since you did such a good job. Brown also practices holistic admission. So when we talk about the rigor and the context of the courses you're taking, how you're getting involved outside of the classroom, nothing different for us. At Brown, I will say we have probably a much smaller population on campus, about 7,000 undergraduate students. So when we're going through those students, we're still highly selective. The couple of things that are going to be different for our process there is something called the open curriculum. Brown is very well known for the open curriculum. I always like to put it in the context of there are about 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States. About a dozen of them have an open curriculum. So when you're coming to Brown, that shouldn't be the only reason you want to apply, but it's definitely something you should understand as you're applying. So the open curriculum basically means that there's no core requirements for our students as they're studying on campus. Students are really coming in, choosing their concentration, which is our word for major. And then outside of those requirements, there's not any really required course that students have to take. So when students are applying to Brown, we really hope that they have an understanding of that open curriculum. What does that flexibility look like? Is that something that's exciting to you? Do you know how to advocate and take advantage of resources around you in a world where you can take over 2,000 courses every year, right? What does that look like for you? So we're really looking for students to understand the open curriculum and sharing that knowledge throughout the application for Brown. And one of the places that comes in, and maybe we'll talk about essays a little bit later, but we do ask for supplemental questions. Those, as a spoiler, are shifting a little bit this year. Last year we had six, this year we'll have four. One of them is still what is the open curriculum going to do for you within your collegiate experience? So again, making sure you can concretely say what that looks like for you. Also, in our application, we have opportunities to submit a video introduction, which I would highly recommend if you have the time. We have opportunities for music portfolios or art portfolios. So all of that can help your application. It's never going to hurt your application. But like Jua said, like anything you submit, we are going to look at. So make sure you are presenting all of those facets of who you are, and what you want to do in college. The last thing I think where we differ as well, testing. We are going to require the SAT or the ACT. We do not have a preference, so take whichever one your heart desires. We do super score, right? So we're going to look at testing in the context of your school and in the context of you. We always want testing to help you in the process. So if you take that SAT twice, super score means we'll take the highest level math, highest level English, put it together. If you take SAT and ACT, we will super score across those tests. So whichever score looks highest in that respective testing space, we will take, right? So we want to make sure that that's always helping your application. So we have that broader understanding of, are you a good fit for our academic culture, and will you be able to thrive when you get to campus in Providence, Rhode Island? But I think that is all.
Okay, so let me ask another question. And Tara, this time you can go first. How do you evaluate extracurriculars and how important are they in the application?
Yeah, so when we're looking at your extracurriculars, it is going to be context based, but I think where all y'all go to school, there are abundant opportunities, whether that's like research if you wanted to get involved, activities at the club, athletics, part-time jobs, family responsibilities. There's not a single activity that I don't want to see ever, right? We want you as admission officers, especially at Brown, where you're going to come in and be able to take any class that you want and join any club that you want. We want you to figure out what motivates you. What are you driven by? And then we want you to seek out those experiences. So a lot of times I have students come up to me at fairs and they ask, should I volunteer this summer or should I do this research? And I'll say, which one do you want to do? And that's the correct answer, right? We want you to be passionate about the things that you're doing in the extracurricular space. And that's going to come across really well within our applications. I can kind of tell when a student's like, well, my mom made me volunteer for the summer versus I was really excited to be at this food bank helping my community. They come across very different in your application. And that's kind of my second piece. When you are sharing about these activities, we don't care that every single student who applies does Model United Nations, right? How many students across the nation are doing Model United Nations? Not a bad thing, but what we then want you to do is say, this is my impact that I had within Model United Nations. This is why it was an important activity for me in my high school experience and how it's going to impact me at the collegiate level. So again, no wrong activities, but make sure that you're elevating your response and telling me why that activity was important to you and how it shaped you over the last 4 years.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jua.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's Tara kind of wrapped that up in a really wonderful way, in an efficient way. I think that kind of hits upon that. I'll kind of approach it from a couple of ways. First, I'll approach it just from a way of UC Berkeley, and something I should have said in the first response. One of the biggest things I tell students is that we are a large institution. So you're dealing with, over 33,000 undergraduate students, freshman class of over 6,000, of applicant pool this past year of well over 130, thousand applicants. It's a lot of students who are applying. And so extracurriculars are such an important way for you to distinguish yourself from the next individual. And as Tara said, there's no preference of what you're doing. You just need to do something. Productivity is the most important. Like my colleague always says, when you're not sleep or in the classroom, what are you doing with your time? And I love the way that she says that because that really kind of captures, it's very broad. It's so many various things you could be doing. Um, but in looking at that, when you have such a large, for us, you have such a large campus, and also mention the amount of organization that we have, that's understanding fit. Again, there are a lot of students on our campus are doing a lot of different types of things. So our thought process is that you're becoming a part of our community and we expect for you to contribute. And so in the admissions process, we're forward facing here. We're trying to get a set precedence of what you're already doing to give me a sense of, okay, this is what you're going to do once you get to our campus or whatever campus that you're going to. So it's really, really important that we know that you're going to be a contributing member to our community. And so whether that's through your activities in school, outside of school, having a job, helping at home, all of those things are really, really valuable. Um, in addition to that, part of the kind of, like we say, kind of the non-traditional, and it's really not, they're not extracurriculars. It's just maybe you have a responsibility at home and you're having to step up in an adult role where maybe it's multi-generations in your house and you're helping elders with, you know, everything from translating documents to taking them to doctor's appointments. And, I've seen it all, cooking dinner, the parents are working, taking your siblings to and from school, helping them with their homework. That's a really, really important role, and it shows a lot of maturity, and a lot of sacrifice. So even that type of dynamic is extremely valuable. And so I'll stress that because a lot of times students feel like if that is their world, that's their lived experience, that we're not going to get it and that we're not going to value it. And we do. That's a part of your context. So when we keep saying that term, keep stressing it, that's a part of it as well. So please know that we value that. If that is a part of your life and what's going on, tell us that because we cannot assume. You have to tell us, this is what I am doing. This is how much time this takes. This is how many years I've been doing, and so that we understand because you're doing that, maybe you don't have time to be involved in certain things in school because you're stepping up in an adult role in your day-to-day life, which is extremely valuable. So please know that is also a valuable part of this as well. But as far as the other part for applicants for filling out the application, a little nuance as well. Depending on which school you have a lot of schools that utilize, let's say, the Common App. We are a little bit different where we utilize the UC application. So it is shared by all 9 UC campuses. That's the only place you can apply to one of our campuses. Through the application, what I like is that our extracurricular section gives you 20 spaces. So we give you double the amount that you get on the Common App. So you have a lot of places to tell us all the wonderful things that you're doing, honors and awards, organizational involvement, special programs, employment, community service. So please take full advantage of that. What I stress though is that we're looking at, and this for regardless of format, we're looking at the quality of your involvement, not necessarily always the quantity. I have students who may fill out all 20 spaces, but what they're sharing is somewhat of a missed opportunity. There's not a lot of time spent there. They're not taking any leadership roles. It's very kind of broken up, which is still fine. That's your life. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we have those students who are sustaining their activity 3 to 4 years, they're stepping up in those leadership roles. There's a lot of value of what they're doing. They're having impact in everything that they're involved in. That is really where my thought process goes. So you may have half of those spaces filled out, but everything that you're doing, you're highly involved. There's a lot of time committed. You are that change maker. You are that person stepping up in your school community or locally. That's really where the focus goes. But going back to Tara's point about filling it out, you really need to be very detailed. That's why I go back to we cannot assume. So if we're asking you hours per week, weeks per year, how many years, I expect to see numbers. If you don't fill that out, you are doing yourself a disservice. You are working against yourself. So again, highly selective. We have a lot of applicants, so you have to distinguish yourself. So those little details honestly make a really big difference. Leadership roles. If you've been in an organization all 4 years of high school, I had a student ask me this yesterday, and let's say you've been an officer for sophomore year, and then you kind of stepped it up and became maybe president for your 11th and 12th grade. Tell us that. A lot of times you don't have a lot of words to work with, but try to be concise and work with your counselors if you need to, but work on making sure that we see. Hey, I was, secretary 10th grade, our president 11th and 12th. You can just keep it short and then jump into what are you doing? Like, yes, I know what FBLA is. I know what this particular organization it is, but what are you doing? Maybe you've increased membership. Maybe you have revitalized this organization. Maybe you've helped take them to a state championship. Whatever that is, what your role is really where we're trying to learn. So, yes, we want to know what the organization is, but really, really try to take some time to tell us what you are doing that's those I statements, what you're doing to really give us a better understanding of your impact and all the things that you're doing. And I'll also end with saying acronyms, please spell things out. Do not assume that we know what an acronym is. If I'm dealing with something that's maybe based Maryland, DC, whatever it is, and I have a reader or somebody who's based in California, a lot of times they're not going to know that stuff. And so that's also, I don't want you working against yourself. Spell it out and then kind of go from there. So be very careful with your acronyms as well. And that's just more of a format thing. Again, just kind of tips to help you all navigate this.
I'll
Thank
also
you.
jump in before we move on. Kind of like formatting, I know that on the Common application, after you put all of your activities in, it has a preview button. Please just look at that and see how your activities are formatted. If you're writing in all caps, kind of feels like you're yelling at me, it's fine, but like just make sure you're going through and everything is legible since we're going through so many applications every day.
That's a very good point. Thank you. And thank you both so much because I can't tell you how many times I say this to kids when they come in here and they say, what would look good for an activity? And I'm like, what do you like to do? Like they just don't get it. Or I only have three. My friend has 20. I'm like, well, maybe you spend twice as much time on those three. So thank you so much. Did either of you go to the institutions you're representing? I don't remember. No? Jua? No? Okay. I was just curious what got you in if you did. Um, okay, let's talk about the supplementals because very different than the personal statement, and obviously you're on a different application, Jua, with Berkeley. But talk a little bit about how the supplemental would compare to like your personal statement and why the supplementals are so important, please.
I can
You want to
jump.
get a start, Terry? Yeah.
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
start. So again, you have the personal statement that you will be getting through your common application. And then, as I mentioned, we have now 4 supplemental questions that students will need to submit. For us, I think about it in a sense of we're hoping everybody has really good grades. That's the foundation. We're hoping people are involved and you're doing what you're passionate about, like we just said in your activities. But then we also want to know who you are as a human, as a classmate, as a friend. And so the supplementals for us are a good way to see how you approach the world. What does that look like for you in the classroom, outside of the classroom? So for our supplementals, we have the open curriculum. Like I said, it's kind of our bread and butter. We want you to know what that is and how you're going to spend the next 4 years with us. There is one about what brings you joy. That's kind of my favorite one to read. It lets us know how are you looking at the world around you? How do you find happiness in bigger, crazy things or smaller, everyday things? We will have one that is asking about like what course would you teach and why? You can think outside of the box. It could be physics, but it's again another way to see how students are approaching and thinking about education for us. And then the last one will be kind of about community. Like I said, we want you to be a good community member when you get here. We want you to get involved. So we want you to think about what that looks like for you now, and then how can that transfer to our Brown University campus on College Hill. So the supplementals, again, are a good way for you to put your best foot forward. A lot of the spaces in the application are kind of out of your control in the sense that like your grades 4 years in the making, can't change those. Activities 4 years in the making, you can change how you present them to us, but you can't change those activities. Your teacher letters of recommendation are coming from someone else and you can't even see those. So the essays are a really great chance to tell us in your own tone of voice, who are you? What drives you? What are you excited about? And how can we start to think about that on our college campus? My biggest advice there is our supplements might overlap with some of the other supplements to other schools that you're applying to. If you are copying and pasting one supplement from one school into another school and you're just changing that name of I Love Brown University and in the next supplement it's I Love UC Berkeley, you are doing yourself a disservice. We are looking at those supplements to make sure you are a good fit for our institution. And I think we can both agree, Drew, that like our institutions are very, very different. So that type of student we're looking for might be very, very different. So really just take the time to put some time and some thought and some care into these supplements, please. Make sure you're proofreading all that, but they should be coming from the heart as you're writing those.
Yeah, and I'll just pick up kind of where Tara left off, which I really love about the intention that you're putting into these. For us, we're a little different where for the general process, we don't have supplementals. So that's why, I thought Tara should kick us off because that's such a core part of their process. But for us, we're a little different. Where just for the essay portion, I'll just say this. We have what we call personal insight questions, and they're 8 short answer questions. You have to answer 4 out of the 8. That is the general process. Everybody has to do that regardless of which UC campus you apply to. All of us use that. All of us will see those depending on which campus you choose to apply to. So that's kind of the baseline part of our process, the PIQs as we call them. Choose wisely because I love the fact that you have variety and pick the ones that make the most sense for you. So even though they're a supplemental, I kind of see them in that way because they're structured in that way in relation to some other schools. But those are the basic process, the PIQs, not short, not a longer essay style. So PIQs is one, but getting into the supplementals where we have those are for very specific programs on our campus. A lot of times, they're even more selective programs. So before you all got on, I think I was mentioning to, I think all of the counselors here, for the last couple of years, I've traveled in the DMV for a few visits with my colleague, Christina Rodarte, who is part of our Sciences Po dual degree program. And that is a program where we do have supplemental essays because it's a very specialized program. You're spending your first years of college in France, last year's of college with us in California, and you get degrees from both of us. So there's some additional things that we need to know. Still following in line with everything that Tara shared of what we're hoping to extract from your essays, but it's very specific. Same thing for the University of Hong Kong dual degree program. We also have a very popular one, especially for the DMV region called MET, which is Management, Entrepreneurship, and Technology, where you're working to earn a degree in business and a degree in engineering. Also, a supplemental essay. Our School of Business in general has a supplemental essay. So that is more so how we utilize it. More so those more specialty, more competitive programs, you will see those supplementals requested from you. Using the UC application, typically either it's going to automatically prompt you and you just kind of copy paste to put it in when you're ready, and or they may send it separately as a separate link directly to you. So it just kind of varies from that standpoint. The bottom line is, as Tara said, please, follow instructions, pay attention. Really take your time so that you don't miss that information as to how we're seeking that information so that what's the deadline, so that you're not, again, working against yourself, missing a deadline, not submitting something that can be crucial to you being competitive within that pool. And it may be a situation where if you're not competitive, you will not be admitted and we will not consider you for another program. That's it. So you really have to make sure that you're following instructions. I tell students as well, this is where you all are doing your research now ahead of time. Visit our websites. You can see all this stuff now. There's no guesswork, literally even for the PIQs, we're not changing them anytime soon. You can go and check those out. The different programs I mentioned, they talk about that on their websites. They have virtual info sessions where you can kind of learn about them and ask questions about them. The bottom line is that's why it's important to educate yourself during this time period so that you all are best prepared. You know what we're asking, what we're seeking to hear from you, what's the format, all of those various things. And again, especially for us, because that's not a typical part of our process, that can be confusing. So that makes it even more so very important that you're taking the extra time if you're applying to one of these more selective programs to even more so understand the process as to what they're seeking when it comes to supplementals, interviews, and so forth, even though that's a little bit different from what we're talking about, but it starts with those supplementals. So that's kind of where this part of our process, that kind of where it fits with supplementals and how we handle those. One more thing.
Yes.
Please, please, please. There's finally one thing as well. I talked about MBT, business engineering. The question itself, please, please answer the question. I know that sounds like common sense. Not everyone does it. I tell students all the time, a lot of times students will mention maybe one portion, they'll talk mainly about business or they'll talk mainly about engineering, and they don't merge the two. This is a program where you're earning both degrees. So we need to know how do those go together for you as an individual? Why do you want to be a part of that process? And so this goes back to Tara's point as well of just understanding what are we asking. So really make sure that you are answering both parts of that, not just one or the other. And I say that because that also can work against you in our process. And you want to make sure that you're, again, giving yourself the best chance in a really highly selective process.
Thank you so much. Tara, I have a question for you. Your test required now. So students have gotten so used to not sending scores when they're not in the mid-range. So how is that going to hurt them? Because a lot of students really have not put a lot of focus on tests because they knew that these schools were test optional. That's, it's all kind of changing back now. But how will that hurt a student if they have extraordinary grades and everything else is really good, but the test just is not what it should be?
Yeah, great question. So I think this is our second or third year of being back with testing, and I think a lot more people are kind of shifting that way, except for those special, kind of like UC situations. So hopefully it's not a shock that you have to submit any of your testing these days. My biggest advice I tell students is take the SAT once, maybe twice, and then I tell them very professionally to chill out. There is a lot of data out there that tells you after that first SAT, that's going to be your best. Sometimes you can go up by 30, 50, maybe 100 points if you're really, really putting in the work, but there's not going to be a lot of movement on those scores generally. So I think take the test. If you want to go to Brown, submit the application. You cannot change your test score, right? So I think focus, and I don't want to say worry, but like focus on other pieces of your application and t giving us other reasons why we would want to invite you, right? Or admit you. If those essays are telling us how spectacular you are on your campus, cool. That gives us another reason where we can have a conversation about the application. Because testing is never going to make or break an application. When we are looking at testing, like I said earlier, we are really trying to look at testing in a way that is always going to be beneficial for each student. And one of the things that I really appreciate about Brown is we are looking at testing in context. So we can see kind of like what does that middle 50% look like at your school for testing? And then how are you kind of in that range? Means you're doing a good job. Are you above that? Means you're kind of succeeding. So although we do have those published middle 50% for the SAT and the ACT, there's a lot of wiggle room. I always like to emphasize to students as well. That's the middle 50%. So if we're doing the math, right, we're all in calculus, maybe 25% below, 25% above are still being admitted into the institution. So you have to submit it at the end of the day. So take it once again, maybe take the ACT if the SAT isn't how your brain works. I know many moons ago when I went to college, the ACT just made more sense in my brain. So maybe try both of them out, and then submit whichever one's going to look best in the context of text testing as well. If you take any AP tests and you're really proud about those, go ahead and send us that. If you're worried about your math score on your SAT, have your math teacher send us a teacher letter of recommendation. There's ways to kind of supplement if you feel your SAT isn't showing all of your capabilities.
Thank you. Okay, here's a tough one. What is the secret sauce for getting into your schools or any highly selective school? Is there a secret sauce?
I don't really think there's a secret sauce. I think the bottom line is, um, I feel like you're having more and more applicants apply for a set amount of spaces, which is also what makes us selective. It's not, and unfortunately, therefore, we then have to turn away thousands of really phenomenal students. I stress that this is not personal. And most of our applicants would do fine on our campus. We are very clear about that. We are just building the best class for our institution per cycle and things change. There are institutional priorities that you all cannot control and that's out of your control. And I think Tara mentioned that in one of her previous responses. And that's really hard to digest, I think, for students and families and even counselors sometimes, because you all are cheerleaders for these students, but it's out of your control, whether it's something regarding certain academic programs that we're building, things with athletics, things regarding, certain populations, whatever it is. It's a lot of things going on in higher ed right now. So institutional priorities play a really big part in that. But there's really no special sauce. To me, the key to doing that is being best prepared. And that doesn't change. Making sure that clearly you are taking advantage of your curriculum at your school, which we talked about. Your grades are solid. You are involved in whatever that may look like for you. You are stepping up in those leadership roles so that you are prepared. Whatever school that you apply to, you're going to be competitive, period. So that to me is the key. But a part of that preparation is educating yourself about this process. So like we've talked about extracurriculars. We've talked about the essay and supplementals and things like that. That's a part of it as well. Understanding what each of us are seeking. You're seeing right now, UC Berkeley and Brown are very different. And so depending on where you are applying, you may apply to both of us. Some students may only apply to one or the other based on we're very far and we're talking about locations and size and based on educating and really figuring out what's going to be the best kind of environment for you. That's going to make a difference. Knowing if you need a supplement, knowing if test scores are required, knowing like essays, when are they due? Do I need letters of recommendation? When are they due? Who do I need to ask? The more that you know, the better you can navigate this process. And to me, increase your chances at being admitted to an excellent school. And it doesn't have to be per se a highly selective school. It just needs to be a great school for you. And I think that's the key and why your counselors here work with you all when it comes to getting a reasonable school list as to which schools you can apply to that any of these schools you apply to, you would be comfortable going to any one of those schools, not just applying to apply. There needs to be intention again behind why you're applying to these schools. So I think the thought process is the key. Preparation, 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 and then taking your time, being thorough, being detailed about this when you're filling out the application. And of course, that also work with your counselors. That is why they are here. Please lean into them, ask questions, go to programs offered at your high school. You all are in a great school system. So go to things about financial aid and what college admission things, go to a college fair, all the various resources at your fingertips. You all need to take full advantage of them, especially because most of them, they don't cost you anything. So go take advantage so that you're, again, better educated about the process. So I feel like the preparation is, if anything, is the per se special sauce, just because I feel like you'll be better prepared at how you navigate this process. And in doing that, you will be able to hopefully be more competitive within any applicant pool that you are choosing to apply to. That will be my response. So I don't know, Tara, what do you think?
I agree. I kind of want to jump in on 2 points. Like the school list is really important to consider. We are both highly selective institutions. I think a highly selective college is a reach school for any student across the United States. So really thinking about like how many of those highly selective schools you're actually applying to. And within that, it's again doing your research, like Joa was just saying. I know that there are some students out there who will apply to every single Ivy League school. The Ivies are an athletic conference, and that is the only thing we have in common, right? So if you are a student applying to all the Ivy League schools, I really have to think about like how is your Brown application fitting for another application in the middle of the woods, right? They're very different spaces, and so I think you really need to do your research on each school. And when you're doing the research, it does come across in your application. We are really able to read between the lines of like, you really want to be here. This is coming across as authentic. You understand our values, and you're able to show that in your application. And I think that's my last piece of the secret sauce. Please tell us every single thing about you, besides what you ate for breakfast, right? We are reading so many applications, and the ones that really stick in my mind are the ones where I understand all about your academics, all about what you do in your summer, what your favorite things to read are, if you have any hobbies and you really like Legos, right? The more you can tell us, the better. Because if we were to print out your applications, it's maybe 10 to 15 pieces of paper while you are all living, breathing, happy students. And so we're really trying to get at the core of who you are. So the more you can tell us, the better. Please.
That's great advice. Thank you. I have students that will come in my office and say they're applying to every Ivy League because they want to increase their chances. And I keep telling them it doesn't work that way. So thank you. I don't know how to get that across. Um, so I am going to open this up. There haven't been many questions. Okay. If you
There,
report,
Kate, there was
that's
I was going to say, Kate, there was one that I was sent to me privately that I thought would be a
okay.
great one, if you don't mind me
Yeah, please,
throwing it
please
out
do.
there. And I'll let Tara kind of tackle this first, and I'll cover it, whatever. But and it's a really great question. So, a student asks for prestigious colleges, is it better to take a bunch of AP classes but get a B or two, or on an on level or more standard level courses get all A's? We get this question quite a bit. Student has taken six or so classes so far. They have one semester B for one class, and they took it as a freshman, and one quarter B for one they took as a sophomore, and they're currently a sophomore. So, Tara, what are your thoughts on that about, a couple of B's and more advanced level curriculum versus all A's and standard level courses? And again, great question.
Yeah, great question. You can read it. We're pretty clear about it, even on our website. We do look for students who are taking the most rigorous course load available to them. I think the caveat there is we talked about all the other things we're looking at in your application. Um, and so if you're taking 10 AP courses in a year and you're not eating and sleeping and doing activities and being a human, that's when I would say maybe take it back, take a deep breath, drop two courses. So we do want students to be taking a rigorous course load across different activity or different academic areas. But if it is coming at the expense of other pieces of you and your experience, that is when I would say go talk to your counselor and kind of reflect on what that looks like for you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Do you have
Wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, no, great advice. Do either of you have a preference of AP over IB? Because not all our schools offer IB. We're full IB diploma here, but I know Walter Johnson is not. They don't offer any IBs. Do you have a preference?
No, no preference. Again, I think going back to the term I've probably said way too many times is still the context. It really depends on the school. What's offered at the school is how what we're looking to see from students at that respective school. If it's AP is their curriculum, that's what I expect to see. If it's IB, that's what I expect to see. Again, we have schools that have a mixture of different curricula, and then we're still looking at what are students typically taking at, as far as what's the combination, what's the level of rigor. I think some schools, looking at the school profile, if you as a school maybe sometimes have kind of a tier based on the level of rigor, maybe if you have dual enrollment, you may consider your IB or AP curriculum more rigorous than the dual enrollment, and you say that in the school profile. That's a part of our thought process. So it's really always about the context of the individual school, especially with a lot of schools now kind of nixing the AP curriculum and they have their own curriculum. And some parents and students feel like that's a kind of a detriment. They are not, because it's always will still boil down to your respective school and what's available and what are you doing with it.
Thank you. Tara, do you have a preference, AB or AP or IB?
I was just gonna say retweet. Whatever is available to you is completely fine with us. And when you're like in the IB, hopefully we're doing that full diploma, your three higher level, three standard level. But that's kind of just built into the curriculum. So just setting yourself up for success at whatever college you are excited about.
Thank you. And this is another question I get from students a lot. Do you look at the number of students that are applying from each of our high schools and say, oh, well, we can only take one from BCC, or we can only take, does it matter how many are applying from here? Like, are you limited to the number of students you can take from a specific high school?
No, I mean, we're really looking for like who is just going to be most competitive in any given pool. I think we're seeing probably 60 plus from all the schools in Moco. And it's not a shock. And some years we're taking 10 students from a school, and some years we're taking zero. It's really just like in the broader weight of things, who is going to be the best fit for our institution. And that's why we can never make any promises, because in one year it might be so vastly different than another year.
Thank you.
I'll echo completely everything that Tara said, exactly how it works. I think for us, the only difference, and this is really still no difference, is the fact that standing for the greater good is that because we are a public institution, there is in a responsibility to the state of California. So meaning we have to have a certain amount of residents on our campus or campuses in relation to out-of-state students. So that's typically the conversation we have to have. And what does that look like? How does that affect the application pool and so forth? Because I really try to stress for us, we have a lot more California applicants in relation to out of state, even though we have a lot of out of state and international applicants, but there's a lot more residents who apply. That's a part of it. Also, say based on the program you're applying to, where we more admit by college versus kind of, a major per se. So like College of Letters and Science, you're applying to that. College of Engineering. So a lot of times you see even our admit rates, it's by college. So that also plays a part. It's not about school or region or any of that stuff. It's more so again about, as Tara said, it really depends on every year. It's, what's the competitiveness of your class, also how are you performing amongst your peers at your school. But again, looking at our school based on being admitted by college, that's where you'll see kind of those nuances with admit rates and those, various things. But again, I just want to stress that public piece because I do think that's important in understanding that if you all are applying to different public institutions, that part of it, if you all are staying in state, that's going to make a difference, if you want to stay in Maryland and so forth. So just food for thought.
Thank you so much. Does anybody out there, Gail, Rhonda, Sarah, do any of our CCNs or students have any other questions? You can either come off mute or just put it in the chat. Looks like you guys have been very thorough. Gail, you're muted.
You guys did a great job. I
Yes.
get very often for the UC schools that the kids think they can apply to one and it will bounce back to all the others, which is not, I know.
No, not yeah, that's definitely not the case. As I'm sure you already telling them, Gail. No, you have to pick which particular UC campus you are applying to. You got all nine of us there. You can apply, and you can apply to all nine of us. That does not play a part of admissions. I don't see what other UC campuses you are applying to. So as I tell students, we don't care. Please know that if you read that on Reddit or somewhere else, that's not true. We're not looking to see what other campuses you apply to. Typically, we actually suggest that you apply to more than one UC campus so you have more options. And something I think both Tara and I have said as well, even within the UC system, our campuses are very distinct. Berkeley, in relation to like a UC Santa Barbara or UC Merced, is very different. UC Davis, extremely different. So that's also the beauty of the system. That's why I really love it for that fact. As a student, I think you have some really wonderful options. But if you're applying to all nine, that says to us, even though we're not looking at it, but if you're telling me this, that says you haven't done your homework because we are very, very different. Not to mention, you are paying an application fee per campus. So it's $80 as a domestic student. So that adds up very, very quickly. So that is also something you need to take in mind when it comes to just the financial piece of that. But from an admission standpoint, not at all, Gail. We're not looking at that. It does not play a part. If you do not select that campus, they are not receiving your information. However, if you do select more than one, whichever ones, we're all seeing the same information. And I say that more so for maybe the personal insight questions, keep them general. If you favor one of us over the other, you don't want to keep saying that one campus and the other four are like, they don't want to come here, but keep that in mind. And it's not even a bad thing. It's just like that's going to possibly be a better fit for you. But if you're talking about yourself, you're not talking about a campus. And so you can very easily keep it very general because you're talking about yourself, and we can extract again what we need to see if you're going to be a good fit for our individual campus. So that's another part that I suggest as well, Gail, that I get a lot of questions about if students are looking at more than one UC campus for the PIQs, keep them general.
Someone just asked, are online acceptance rates accurate?
Yeah, I
I'm
have
not sure where
12%.
they're looking for that, but
I have 12% here for Berkeley and 5.35 for Brown, just as an example. Are those accurate?
Yeah, for this last cycle, yes. We haven't kind of published this cycle because we're still wrapping up and but I would say early fall. For us, we have to get the approval from the Office of the President for the UC system. Once that gives approval, all nine of us can then kind of we'll post our actual rates and things. If and I don't know where you're going either. Hopefully you're going to an actual official website so that it's actually accurate. We even have a lot of data through the Office of the President. That's accurate. So I will say for us, make sure you're going to those trusted sources so that not going to some random website that a lot of times does not have accurate information.
and Jua,
And check,
can
so
you tell us what percentage of your students come from in-state?
Right now, Berkeley specifically, residents on our campus, we're at about, I would say 82% are residents. The remaining 18% are out of state, domestic and international. They tend, Sarah, to be kind of that remaining kind of 18% are kind of split in half between maybe the 9-10% per se domestic, 9-10% per se for, or whatever it is, 9% for international. Something that happened the last few years is that there was more of a focus for UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Diego. The three of us typically have more out-of-state students in relation to the other six campuses. As a system, it was decided that we needed to more so align with our numbers with the rest of the UCs. So it's been some years now, we incrementally kind of slowly kind of inched that percentage down so that we can match the rest of the UC, Sarah. So that's kind of what happened for, again, Berkeley, LA, and San Diego, where each of us has been doing it. But that's kind of where we fall as far as percentages.
So it's not dictated by the state of California. You guys kind of find your
No, it's definitely dictated by that percentage is definitely dictated by what we call our UC regents,
okay.
which kind of make the call for the University of California system. And the regents are a mixture of university administrators, legislators for our state. All of this is kind of intertwined, but the UC regents, they make those calls, Sarah. And so, yeah, very much we're having to align. And that was a system-wide decision. So no, we definitely have to kind of align as a system with kind of what's being put forth in policy. So that's kind of where that came from and having to make that shift for those specific three campuses.
Great,
I
thanks.
have I
Hello.
have two more questions, one in the chat and one for me. The one for me is how many years of foreign language do you require while the student is in high school? Not the middle school ones, because those are high school credits, but selective schools typically want them to continue with their world language. So what is your requirement?
We have no requirement. We do recommend that you continue your language through what is offered or throughout your senior year. I will say we do see a good amount of students maybe dropping a language in that last senior year, but they're picking something else up. So maybe you're taking two lab courses or two math courses instead of a language. I would say those are both still very rigorous course loads.
Thank you. Jewett?
Yeah, for kind of the A through G, that kind of guides the University of California as our process. Typically, we want to see 2 years of a language other than English, Rec preferably three, but 2 years typically is what we like to see. I will say though, if there's a reason why you don't have it, there's an additional comment box that I always tell students just to tell us why you don't have it. I think to Tara's point, it really just kind of depends. And as far as like there's flexibility there. There may be a very specific reason why you don't have it. You may have shifted schools, things of that nature, but you have to tell us that. So utilize the additional comment box for one. But I will also say, looking at, also what are you applying for? I also think makes a difference. So like I mentioned the Sciences Po dual degree program. Granted, that program is taught in English, But clearly, if your language skills are strong, that's going to make you a little bit more competitive. If you want to study, global management, global studies, something that you want to do is within that realm. I think having, 3 to 4 years of a foreign language, I think overall and what you've been involved in, I do think does kind of give you overall just kind of a sense of a level of kind of competitiveness of like, no, I'm very much true to what I'm trying to do. This is how I've prepared. So do know that's also considered it holistically and kind of what that looks like. Not that it's necessary, but it is something that we do value if it's a part of your kind of your experience when you're applying.
Thank you. And somebody in the chat said, if you've done an activity for only 1 or 2 years, but you're really passionate about it, does that affect your admissions?
I would say no. I think Joa mentioned earlier about telling us how many hours per week, weeks per year that you're doing something. And so if I am only seeing 1 or 2 activities, I would hope to see you're spending probably more time on those per week, per year, on your common application as you're filling that time in. I would challenge you though. I think most students are doing more than want to do things, right? If you have any hobbies, you are reading over 100 books a year. Like those are also things that can go into those activities list. I've seen the rise of like students who are doing crochet Etsy shops. Send me the link. They're usually cute. I've seen the rise of TikTok stars. If you give us a handle, make sure it's appropriate. But like there are a lot of things that students are doing that are not that you're not thinking of. So I'd say expand how you spend your time and feel free to put anything on those activities lists.
Great, thank you. And I see we are coming up on noon. We can take one more question. Anybody else?
I will say there was one in the chat specifically for me. Brown, we have the video introduction. It is a 90-second video. It is completely optional. However, going back to the TikTok of it all, if you can scroll social media for 5 minutes, you can do a 90-second video. I would recommend it. It's another way for you to tell us something about you. And that goes back to the context of like the more we know about you, the more excited we can be about you. So the video does not need to be anything crazy. You don't need props, you don't need special effects, you do not need 10 different locations. It is just 90 seconds. You can sit in a corner in a desk at your room and just tell us anything additional that we have not learned yet. So I would highly recommend it, but if it is something that's going to stress you out, it is optional.
Did you all hear that? Highly recommended. Just make a note of that. Jua, any last minute comments?
My last thing is more so I think Tara mentioned earlier about just kind of the amount of classes that you're taking and if your grades are being impacted that the mental health component of it, just have some fun with this process. Please don't let this take over your lives. I know that this is very stressful. It's a lot going on. Trust that you will end up where you are supposed to be. But enjoy, especially for those of you who are definitely going to your senior year, please enjoy your last year. Have some fun. Stay prepared, but enjoy it. It will go quickly. And you will figure it out, but have fun with this. Please, take a day out of the week. That's your day to go you talk to your parents and then cut it off. So I just don't want this process to dictate your lives because hopefully I want it to be fun. I loved applying to college. I thought it was really cool. So I want you to have fun with it. So please do that. Don't let it dictate your lives. And please, that a part of that is leaning on your support system. You have phenomenal counselors right here with us. They are there. They are highly experienced professionals in this work. You can go to them, ask them questions. What they're telling you is accurate. So please lean into your support systems, and that will help keep the stress levels down because you are working with trusted sources. They know what's going on. So please make sure you're trusting them and ask questions in addition to asking us in admissions questions as well.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. Students, as I said, this has been recorded and it will be added to the workshop spreadsheet on the far right column. It'll say Zoom, probably not until later today or tomorrow. So everybody enjoy the rest of your summer.